Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of What's Going On in the Real Estate Market in the Geneva Lakes, Wisconsin area. So, the real estate market, it is as dynamic and intriguing as Lake Geneva itself. Now, the end of third quarter forecasted a pretty chilly winter, if you recall from some of my last videos. However, this October and November really turned a corner. So let's dive in. As you can see from this graph, we are literally within spitting distance of the target 2% that the Federal Reserve had mandated for inflation. And this happened because employers are continuing to add jobs, and we're not seeing huge obvious signs of an economic slowdown or petering out. In fact, core inflation was predicted to be 3.7% by the end of the year. Now they're forecasting 3.4%. Now, this bodes well, again, making the likelihood of a soft landing through the end of fourth quarter very high. However, we are seeing signs of some weakening, more specifically when it comes to spending. As you can see from this graph, retail sales, which accounts for about 2/3 of our economic activity, was very strong over this past summer. In fact, it was so robust, it propelled us to an economic growth rate of about 5%. However, in the month of October, we're seeing a sharp slowdown. The reason being is high interest rates. That's finally starting to catch up with the consumers. So now they're facing these multiple barriers to continuing to spend at the same rate that we've seen over the past year or so. And that's manifesting in the form of the cost of borrowing of mortgages, of car loans, of paying off credit card debt, which, by the way, balances have climbed over this past year, and not to mention the return of student loan payments. All of these, plus the high interest rates, is really taking its toll on the average consumer. In addition to a decline in consumer spending, small firms in the month of September reported that it's even harder to access credit. Both those two forces combined could really make businesses even more reluctant to hire during the fourth quarter, much less make any sort of business investment. Business investments including acquisitions of buildings or big ticket equipment, that has been actually flatlined over the past summer. So if they continue that trend, that could put a dampening or slow our growth by about 1% in the fourth quarter. Really, the saving grace of our economy has been our labor force, or more specifically, the share of workforce participation. This graph shows the share of people working or seeking work. As you can see, in October of this year, we were at 83.3%. And if you look at this graph, we're at near 10-year highs. Given all the dynamics that we covered, optimism is actually still high that we are going to avoid a recession altogether in the fourth quarter. And that's being fueled by three factors. The first one being inflation, that it's continuing to decline. The second one being that there's a growing sentiment that the Federal Reserve is done raising interest rates. And the final factor being the robust labor markets, which we just went over, especially considering all these market forces in the face of having about 7.29% average 30-year mortgage rate. That bodes well. Now, the catch-22 that we're going to really have to watch out for is because these economic indicators are still strong. Is that going to give pause to the Federal Reserve on whether or not they should or will continue to keep mortgage rates stable and where they are, vice continuing the increase throughout the fourth quarter? That remains to be seen. So another question we get asked a lot, is there going to be a surge of foreclosures, especially here in the southeast Wisconsin area? And the answer is no, there's not. You can see from this graph from the ICE Mortgage Monitor that we are sitting at historic lows as far as delinquency rates. So we're seeing this at a national level. Now, another way to look at this is the share or the volume of homes underwater that have negative equity. As you can see from this graph, we're also at historical lows. So don't hold your breath for foreclosures coming on the market or flooding it anytime soon. So another question is, how has home prices in Southeast Wisconsin appreciated as compared to the rest of the nation? Well, here in Southeast Wisconsin, home prices annually have grown by about 9.5%, which has outpaced both the East Coast and the West Coast. So our market here in Southeast Wisconsin and the Midwest in general is actually pretty hot. On a month-to-month level, we've grown by about 0.5%, which is on par with the rest of the nation. So we're doing pretty well in our area. All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of really what's going on right here in the Southeast Wisconsin area, more specifically the Walworth County, Racine, and Kenosha County area. As you can see from the days on market. So if we have higher days on market, that means demand is weaker, it's softening. Lower days on market means demand is strong and robust. In September, we saw it go pretty high, which didn't bode well for our area. But then it came back with a vengeance in October. So really great job, buyers. The problem though is that we are seeing conflicting data. And what I mean by this, on a national level, you can see from this graph, this is mortgage applications for home purchase loans. We're at the lowest level that we've seen since the start of the interest rate hike in 2022. All right, so enough of this optimism. Bah humbug, right? What's the worst case scenario? Well, the biggest at-risk group that we have are people that have purchased a home recently for less than 20% down in this high interest rate environment, and particularly they have an FHA loan. That is the most at-risk group, and here's why. You can see from this graph in 2023, now, you saw from the foreclosure graphs that we are at all-time lows in terms of delinquencies. But if we break down which loans are most at risk of being delinquent, they are the FHA loans. In October of this year, the national payment to income ratio is at 40%. Now, lenders, when they lend, they like to see a payment to income ratio of about 30%. That's average, that's healthy. But now we're at 40%. Now, the good news is that lenders have very great standards, and a lot of them are, as you heard, are tightening those standards. However, there are few, if there is a chink in the armor in the mortgage industry, it's going to be the group that I just mentioned. FHA loans that purchased a home in this high interest rate environment that have less than 10% equity. Now, the silver lining to that is that homeowner equity, as you can see from this graph, is at all-time highs. That almost doubles that of what it was in 2008. So if we do, for whatever reason, have any sort of market crash that's even comparable to 2008, there's enough equity in most homes across the United States to weather the storm just fine. It'll only be that at-risk group that's going to feel the pain and be underwater and potentially move into that delinquency and foreclosure bracket. But it's such a small amount. It's the probability is super low. So that bodes well for us in the fourth quarter of 2023. We're also seeing something very interesting happen in terms of listings as well. So as you can see from the graph, we saw 4 straight months of decline in the number of listings. However, in October, it spiked up. Anomaly? Maybe, maybe not. Something that we want to keep an eye out of. Maybe we're finally getting to a point where sellers are fatigued of staying in place, and because interest rates haven't gone up the way that it has been for the past year, maybe sellers are deciding now's the time to move. So I was speaking to one of our sellers recently, and they asked me, aren't we in a seller's market? And I said, yes, technically. So anything below 4 months of inventory means that we are in a seller's market. We went from 2.94 to 2.98. So we are very close to being in a balanced market, but what's making it feel like a balanced market is the fact that interest rates are so high, it's having a chilling effect on buyers. So it's, even though there is very low inventory, there's also very low amount of buyers because of where interest rates are. So it's creating the feel of being a balanced market because in some cases, buyers may have just as much, if not more power than sellers. Here's what I mean. If you are a seller, you will experience the full benefit of this technically seller's market if you have these three things. You have a well-maintained home, you have a fairly priced home, and you have a home in a popular price range. If any of these elements are missing, so your home is not very well maintained, you've overpriced it, or you're in a range that's not realistic for the average or the general population, you're going to feel a little bit of power go back to the buyers. Now for buyers, if you're looking for a well-maintained or newer home, be prepared to make a strong offer, especially if it's in a popular price range, because those are going quickly. If you intend to make a lowball offer on a well-maintained home, I have a competitor I would love to refer you to. Now, if you've been looking for a while and you haven't had any success, I would suggest a couple things. Start looking at older homes that's a little bit more outdated, especially when in terms of the higher ticket items such as roofs, water heaters, furnaces, and septic systems. Those are a pain, not just for you, but for the seller to upgrade. People in general don't want to deal with these particular items as a buyer going into it. So there's going to be more reluctance. So more reluctance means potentially less competition. What you can do is have your agent show you homes that fit your criteria that's been sitting on the market for some time. Why do I say that? Because that seller, depending on where they're at in terms of life events and finances, they may be more amenable to make a offer that's lower than listing. Now, not a lowball offer, but a more realistic fair market value offer. All right, another question that I get is the real estate market in the Southeast Wisconsin area crashing or just softening? So as you can see from this graph, the sold to list ratio, if it's above 100%, that means on average, homes are selling for above the asking price. If it's below 100%, that means on average, homes are selling below. We can expect this to come down, especially in the winter months. As part of normal seasonality, it went from 96.5% to 96.8%, which is actually an anomaly. It's a small anomaly, but it's still, given all the information of what we've gone through, it's still moving. All of the indicators are moving in a positive direction. Now, if it goes to or around 92%, nothing to worry about. It's the same thing it's about the same thing it was last year. And then it's just going to pick up again as soon as the spring market hits. So nothing to worry about here, but curiously, something to be optimistic about. All right, as you can see, the real estate market, especially here in Southeast Wisconsin, it's both complex, robust, and fascinating, all at the same time. I've covered a lot of information. If you have any questions, I love questions, go ahead and send me an email. There's my email information. There's my phone number. We love getting questions from our viewers and watchers. So until next time, thanks for stopping by and have a wonderful holiday season. Bye now.